On the west coast of the Netherlands, a group of visionary coastal engineers and scientists faced a significant challenge: planning for the long term. They're looking 20, 30, even 50 years into the future by working with nature instead of against it. Their project is called the sand motor, also referred to as the sand engine. It harnesses the natural movement of wind, tides, and ocean currents to protect the coastline. Scientists on the coastline carefully monitor sea level rise. Even the most conservative predictions forecast massive change for the Netherlands, especially when it comes to coastal erosion levels.
The projections that we are confronted with, that does worry me. So in 2100 it could be up to 1 meter, and some scenarios indicate 3 meters. And those are huge, let's say, sea level rise changes. That worries me. Yeah.
That predicted rise between 1 and 3 meters by 2100 would completely change the Dutch coastline. It also puts nearby urban centers at risk.
Well, The Hague is a coastal city, so sea level rise can have a dramatic impact on our city over the long term. If we wouldn't have our coast, our city wouldn't exist.
So the Dutch government, groups of coastal scientists and stakeholders, teamed up to develop the sand motor.
The biggest issues is coastal erosion, because coastal erosion is something that will continue for ages. The Dutch coast is straight as an arrow from Hook of Holland to Den Helder, 120 kilometers, and all of a sudden there is a huge bulge of sand.
That bulge is 21.5 million cubic meters of sand, dredged from the nearby ocean floor. Now it's a living experiment, a peninsula that protects the coastline, as well as Rotterdam and The Hague. Over time, wind and tides move the sand continually to replenish the coastline.
So during windy conditions, the wind picks up the particles, and the particles fly, let's say, over the dry beach, and at some points it deposits. And at those locations, typically, after some time, you see vegetation starting to grow. This grass needs a sand supply. If it doesn't have any new sand, it will die.
Instead of putting sand every 2 to 5 years on the beach, we now have this one huge amount of sand located in one spot that will evolve or develop naturally, so we can have it there for 20 to 30 years. That means that nature development can occur because of the large amount of time that you don't disturb the system.
They're monitoring the coastline as it shapes itself over time. It's a method called dynamic coastal engineering.
We leave it to nature to disperse the sand that is brought in by the dredgers. We expect it to be disseminated in the wet part of the coast, so below mean sea level, but also into the dunes. Both processes are part of the same dynamic coastal engineering, preservation, conservation.
Personally, I'm very interested in how the sand grain is transported from underwater, picked up by the waves, put it on the beach, and then the wind takes it over and takes that particle right into the dunes. So the trajectory of such a sediment grain is very interesting to study. To give you an idea of the scale of the sand engine, right there, that's the port of Rotterdam, about 10 kilometers away. Initially, this project started off with let's say about 2 kilometers along shore, but nowadays an area of almost 7 kilometers long is influenced by the sand of the sand engine.
The sand engine not only reinforces the coastline, it is expected to last much longer than what the engineers originally predicted.
From the beginning, the sand engine was a pilot project, so we made some initial predictions on let's say what the lifetime was of the sand engine. We roughly estimated that at 20 years. I think it has a lifetime beyond 40 years. So even, let's say, 30 years from now, this sand will be gone and we'll look at more or less the original coastline again.
And meanwhile, with very little dredging or sand nourishment happening, natural habitats and dunes are given the ability to evolve and sustain themselves with little human impact. But with this system and all its benefits comes some risks that the team had to carefully weigh.
The sand engine is such a huge amount of sand, but it's also very dynamic. And because of that, you create certain different processes at the sand engine. It can only be temporary, like hypoxic conditions, so that means that there's no oxygen in the water. So soil organisms might have difficulty to survive because they don't have oxygen. Because of the dynamic environment, you also can create mobilization, like oxidation, reduction, that are quite complex chemical processes.
These risks are mitigated by a monitoring process that has been going on for a decade. The team created a unique ecosystem for data sharing and collection.
So what we see there is the Argus tower, 40 meters high, with 6 to 8 cameras right on top that monitor the evolution of the sand engine on a daily basis. It gives us a great opportunity to look at how the sand engine is looking after a storm, for example. What actually fascinates me about the sand engine is every time you come here, it's different. So with the people coming to the beach and experience the sand engine every day, they also see how it changes. So that means that now it's changing under, let's say, normal conditions, but after a storm they see that it's changed much more. The understanding of those people that we need sand or other sediments to protect our coast, and that with sea level rise or climate change it is changing, increases the awareness of the people.
When we look into our climate change adaptation strategy, for us it's also very important to do that together with the community, so they see the benefit also for themselves. So here at the sand engine, as you can see, it's used very frequently by people living in The Hague and also in the region, but also for tourists.
It's a draw for the community, kite surfers, bikers, and other ocean enthusiasts. With outdoor activities come tourists, and with tourists come dollars. The sand engine itself is at the center of a tourism economy. Rental homes, restaurants, and beach activities fill the coastline. The sand motor is one part of a bigger resilience initiative that has tremendous support across different government levels. The Dutch national government committed funding for the project through an innovation grant, and it is supported by the province.
So the city has a smaller role, but what is important, what we've looked at the sand engine, is also to not only look at coastal defense, but at the same time develop a recreational area to work on nature in this area. In our resilience strategy, we looked at the shocks and stresses for our city. So this sand engine, of course we look at coastal defense, but it's also an area where people can go to during hot summer days. We've visited the sand engine with many experts in many cities worldwide. You see that this is a solution that can be used also in other places.
By carrying out this pilot project, we're better able to advise from the Netherlands on that kind of developments. And then we have to start exporting this knowledge to other locations, because a sand motor here at Kijkduin is unique.
With the Dutch expertise that we developed here at the sand engine and in other projects, we could kind of open up these lessons learned, these tools, to really have other coasts benefit from what we experimented at the Dutch coast. So that will be my personal ambition for the next decades.